So hi Jenna, how did you find Romania and Cluj and people around this beginning of summer we have here?
This city is beautiful. This is the furthest into Europe I've been. Granted, I haven't gotten to spend a whole lot of time in Europe, but city is beautiful. The people are really friendly. I'm really liking it here.
Great.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that. So welcome everybody. We are live at Romanian Testing Conference 2023. It's the first season of Shift Happens podcast, and we are here with Jenna Charlton. So Jenna, please introduce yourself briefly.
Sure. I'm Jenna Charlton. I've been in the testing space for around 15 years. I'm currently the director of product for a company called Functionize. So we build a low-code, no-code, plus high-code testing tool that uses AI for some cool self-healing stuff. I'm just really excited to be here.
Great. What is the impact that you have on the IT and testing industry?
What's the impact that I have?
Yeah.
You know, I would love to say that my impact is that I bring a deeply human perspective to technical work. I value and I think that we don't spend enough time thinking about the people that use our tools, that use our software, that experience what we build. So I hope that people would say that I bring a very human perspective and a real concern for the people that use our software.
Well, yeah, that's really great, and it's something that we need these days with all this flooding of AI and the changes that we are facing, digitalizing everything and so on. So it's the first time at Romanian Testing Conference for you?
It is.
How did you decide to choose this year and the enabling change challenge that we have for the speakers?
Lena. So Lena mentioned that she needed speakers and the topic was intriguing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Let me put a couple of abstracts together, send them out, see what happens. I've gotten much more adventurous the past couple of years. So I said, let's just go for it.
You already had a workshop the other day, right? How was it with the people there? Were they able to learn new things? Did you connect with them? Did you get good questions? How was it?
Yeah, it was great. So we did fundamental testing skills, which is something I love to do workshops on. So we started the day with the test design techniques, ended the day with exploratory testing. There were great questions. Some people found fantastic bugs when we did exploratory testing. Mm-hmm. One of them was really, really interesting. He was looking at a railroad website. I think it's the Romanian Railroad.
Okay.
And he found that if you were working with the calendar control and then you touched any key on the keyboard and went to advanced options, it was undefined. It couldn't figure out where to direct you to. And he was like, well, this is kind of a weird, interesting bug. And I said, it is weird and interesting, but also this could block an entire group of users. Because if you're blind or you have low vision, or you, for some reason, don't use a mouse, mm-hmm. you're going to interact with that calendar control using the keyboard, which means that automatically you have lost the ability to do the advanced options. So that's an accessibility fail.
Yeah.
So I said, this is a really, really interesting and very, very important bug that somehow nobody's noticed.
It is, and I know at least on Europe level there are a lot of programs that are trying to emphasize on this mm-hmm. need, and they are trying to provide support and budgets to companies to work more on these accessibility features because somehow we are not taking them in consideration enough. Yeah. I remember almost 15 years ago, it was my first interaction with a tester, and I was the developer building something, and I was really proud of my work. Mm-hmm. But as any developer, you accomplish some technical difficulties, and then you say, now it's ready. Yeah. And the tester came to me and said, Alex, I did this, and I clicked there, and then I go back, and I clicked on that button, mm-hmm. and then I clicked on a keyboard key, and in the end, this is the bug that you get. And it was, wow, so this is the skills a tester can have, right? It was mind-blowing for me, but opened my eyes from my developer perspective. And I wonder if this kind of workshop, would it be useful also for developers? Did you have any developer in the room or...
I did have some devs, and I've actually run this workshop for like 100 devs at a conference in Ohio. I'm sure some of the folks there were testers, but the majority were developers. And a lot of them got great thoughts about like unit testing and going beyond just the straightforward. Something that I tell people all the time is that developers are like dogs and testers are like cats.
Okay.
And this is not a negative. Like, I like dogs and I like cats,
Yeah.
but people who know me know that, like, I'm a cat person. But dogs have a very linear way of thinking.
Okay.
They want to learn a task and complete it.
Yeah.
Cats, on the other hand, are hyper independent. This is just part of their nature. And if you teach a cat a trick, it'll do it when it feels like it. But more often, they're going to get distracted by other things. And it's the experimentation that really drives them.
Indeed.
So, like, you may reward them with a treat if they come to you when you call them. But if there's a glass of water on the table, that's way more interesting than the treat that they're going to give them. And testers are like that. We want to like experiment with things and touch things and play with things. And developers are great at experimentation when it's going to solve a problem. We are less interested in solving problems and more about identifying holes.
Yeah. I really love this metaphor you are sharing with us, and I mean it. I mean, I'm a developer, and I'm a dog lover, and I have a dog, and sometimes I work with the dog around me. So I kind of tend to do those kinds of things you mentioned, but it's this relation that we have to improve, and there's been a lot of talks and a lot of discussions about better tester developer bonding, but it's the only way we can build better quality products and have it really useful for the end users of it. If we work together and try to use the skills we have and share them, right? And it's like I know I had this idea in my talk a couple years ago at RTC. Developer, start your day by asking some insights from the tester, because you will write your code better testable from the beginning. And tester, don't wait from the developer to come and push you. Do your job and go to the developer office or call him if you are remotely and try to plan together and put on the same table the skills that you both have. And this is the only way we can move forward and build better tools. So what I know about you is that you are known for your passion for risk-based testing, okay? But I'm not really sure I understand what this is. So can you tell us what is it and where did you find this passion?
Sure. So risk-based testing is about identifying what is most important at the moment, knowing that software is too complex now to test everything. We know that exhaustive testing is impossible. If you're a context-driven tester, you think about the testing principles, that's what it tells us. So risk-based helps us identify what is the most risky, what is our biggest risk at the moment that's going to potentially impact us, what's most important, what do we need to focus on, where do we apply our test coverage, like the most test coverage, down to where do we apply the least amount of test coverage. Risk-based testing is something that was new to me when I joined a company in the US called Progressive Insurance. And so I was learning risk-based testing with them. And then I saw Jenny Bramble do a talk about risk-based testing, and she lit the fire. And it's funny because Jenny and I have become really, really good friends. And now we talk about risk together. And we have these views on risk that are very, very similar, but she takes a different approach. I'm much more pragmatic. She's much more team-focused. And so we have these great conversations about why is this a risk versus this being a risk versus this not being a risk? What I like people to take away when I talk about risk-based testing is when we think about risk, there are some things we forget about. We always talk about what's the likelihood of failure, what's the impact to the user, but there's also this other impact. And that's something we don't spend enough time thinking about, which is the impact to our organization, the impact to our brand. I always say, what is the risk that has you potentially being on the front page of the newspaper? What's the risk that's going to make you part of the news cycle when it fails? If you think about I mainly know things in the US, but Equifax, when they had that breach, I think it was Equifax. So a data breach. that's going to put you on the front page of the New York Times.
Indeed.
So I'm going to apply some extra test coverage there because that's a huge risk to my user. It's a risk to the business. It's a risk to the brand. So we got to think about that. Like, not just how much does it affect the user, how much does it affect potentially the company, but how much does it impact the brand in a way that it may cost us our actual business.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of discussions in the product or project teams between the tech guys and the stakeholders and the amount of testing we should do and test coverage and so on. And we always discuss about the fact that we cannot test everything, right? And we should start from somewhere. And I remember that I always tell the product owners in my team, guys, let's think of, okay, you want me to release a new version. Let's think of the most used user journeys that our users have.
Yes.
Like, what are the top 3?
Yes.
Okay, let me write an end-to-end automation testing for those 3. Let's
Yeah.
start with that. Is it connected?
It is connected.
It's like the basic of...
Yeah, that's absolutely important. And we definitely want to cover our most used user flows. But there's always the risk that there's flows that you don't know your users are using. And there's also this idea of the golden path. And not a lot of folks know about the golden path, but the golden path is actually what makes you money.
Yeah.
So this is the path to our software that leads to the highest dollar value in some way, shape, or form. So that's another thing we have to really consider as far as coverage is this is where our bread and butter is. So we have to make sure that there's coverage there.
Yeah, so could be that I'm trying to cover like most of my users and make sure they will be able to use the most top 3 user journeys, but actually there can be a journey that only 10% of the users are using, but the risk associated to that and the impact can be more deathful than the others, right?
Yeah, because let's say those 10% are your power users. Or that 10% are the users that have the most expensive package or spend the most money. So automatically, because we got to think about the dollars and cents, unfortunately, that gets more coverage as well because it's going to cost us if we lose it.
And in the end, it's about spending a bit more time in planning and thinking before jumping into solving things, right?
Yep.
I remember I attended the workshop which was made to teach developers that test-driven development could be a better tool for their lives and works. And the exercise was inflating balloons. And we were like, please inflate 10 balloons, and everybody started to inflate balloons. Okay, the first mistake, we didn't ask for specification clarification, right? Which color, how big the balloon is. Okay, you need a balloon that is 20 centimeters around. We started inflate balloons again, and then started to measure them. And it's difficult to measure at the end. But what is more easier is that you have like the boundary set from the beginning. You put the balloon inside, and you inflate it exactly to 20 centimeters. And this is like the same in the product development, right? And in software engineering.
Absolutely. And to take that a step further, test-driven development, I wish we extended past just development. And what I mean by this is that test-driven development tells us if our assumptions are correct.
Okay.
So when you go in, and granted, I'm not a good coder, I'm not a dev, but when you go in to start building something, you've made assumptions based on what you've gotten from product as far as what you're building.
Yeah.
But if you build that test first, and then you start building your code, you're now looking at those assumptions you've made and having an opportunity to kind of do a check-in. Now, granted, your assumptions could still be wrong, and it could still just not be a fit. But at least this way, you've gotten another stop where you say, I made this assumption that the intention behind this was X. But now that I see this test run after I've built this code, I think it's actually Y. I'm going to pause, go back to product, and say, hey, I've made some assumptions here. Tell me if I'm right.
Yeah.
And if you're not right, then that gives you another step in the process where product says, okay, clearly I haven't refined this enough. If you can't identify what I'm asking for, I've got work to do to redefine this so that it makes sense to you so you can actually build code off of it.
Yeah. And this is actually what agile product development is, right?
Yep.
It's not about the ceremonies
No.
and the length of them and
Yep.
the pace of them and so on. It's about having this back and forth with all the key members in the team.
It's about not doing capital A Agile, which is the methodologies,
Yeah.
Scrum and SAFe and Kanban and XP. It's about doing lowercase a Agile.
Exactly.
Identifying what works for you, refining what doesn't, and continuing.
Which is what you can find in the manifesto. Like, it's no silver bullet solution. This is just a framework, but use it as it works for you, for your organization, for your team, for your product, for your needs, and you have to adjust it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you've been a BA, right? A business analyst, then you've been a QA, a tester, and now a director of product. Was there any common thread, any constant throughout these changes you had in your career?
So I was a BA for a very short period of time, and I was really a tester, but my title was BA. It was an odd company.
It happens that
yeah.
BAs are doing testing, yeah.
It was a weird job. It was my second job. The kind of like through line through my career is always that I came in being a non-technical person because I started in a help desk. They let me try testing and I fell in love with it. And so it's always been, I really like thinking about the user. I really like thinking about how our software impacts the user. So that's kind of been the through line through my career. And that wound up taking me to consulting for a little while. But being honest, consulting during COVID is not like an optimal situation.
Yeah.
So I wound up just kind of like looking for what's out there. I'm willing to take a risk. I reached out to a friend who connected me to the former VP of product at Functionize. And she was like, listen, I have heard that you know testing. And I don't know testing the way you do. No one at this company knows testing the way you do. Come join us, come help us build things for testers.
Yeah.
And so I've looked at this as still being a tester, but it's kind of my love letter to testing. Like, this is my opportunity to build things that testers will use and will value and will make their lives easier. So I'm still in service to testing and to testers.
Yeah, beautiful, yeah. And in service of your testers in the team, in service for the users of the product. Yeah, this is what we have to do. This is what technology can help us with. But how do we make all the members in the team understand this importance of keeping an eye on the user needs in the end? It's not just about accomplishing a task that you have in your board. It's not just about doing some mechanical stuff, even though it's development, testing, whatever, or documentation or whatever. How can we convince people the importance of this end user needs that our product fulfills? And in the end, I think this makes understanding of the importance of your job and what in the end makes you more responsible.
Yeah.
And
it's a mindset shift. And being of service is a very different perspective than most of us live by. First thing I always recommend is a book that really changed the way I think about things. It's called The Outward Mindset. It's by the Arbringer Institute. It starts with giving kind of these stories and testimonials of people who have experienced some things and the way they shifted, and then it moves to actual culture change. There's two pieces to this, though. There's the personal change, the personal mindset change, but there also has to be an organizational change. So this has to come with support from the most senior leaders. They have to embrace servant leadership. They have to embrace the idea of being of service to the user. But the best example I can give of how this changes things is actually from the book. It's just like in the first couple of chapters, they talk about a SWAT team. So SWAT is like a hyper militarized police unit.
Yeah.
And this SWAT team that this organization worked with, the Arbinger Institute worked with, had like the most complaints of any SWAT team in the US. And think about how big the US is, that's pretty intense. But then after this shift that they made, they went into this situation, they were doing a drug bust, and there's all of these women and children in this house. Mm-hmm. None of the people that they're looking for are there. It's chaos, babies are crying, women are screaming, like it's a mess. And immediately, one of the guys goes back to the kitchen, finds baby bottles and formula, and starts making bottles. The other folks start talking to everybody there, calm voices, de-escalated tones, and they start handing out the bottles, recognizing that if the babies are calm and fed, then the moms will feel safer, and we can actually have the conversation we need to identify where was the miss, where are these people we're looking for, are we at the wrong house, did we get bad intel? But if there's chaos, you're never going to figure that out. So they shifted immediately from we have to arrest people to we need to be of service to these people to calm the situation down to get to where we need to go. And thinking about policing in the US and thinking about how different that is from what we see in the rest of the country, it nearly like brings me to tears because that's community policing and that's being of service versus the other things that we see. So I highly recommend reading the book. Do a book club at your organization. Make it the first one you do. There's lots of exercises and practices in it. There's workbooks that can go along with it. Yeah, that's where I start.
Yeah, definitely could make the change. Yeah, and as you said, it has to, or it can come from the people, it can come from the leadership, but somehow you have to put all them together and follow the same path in the end. I kind of feel that at least in the ecosystem that I know, Romanian, a bit European, there are a lot of cases where leadership is expressing the results of the company, the product, and so on by the power of their own leadership, but forgetting about the involvement of the people that are actually working at the product. Like back in the days, it was not the manager that built Mozilla Firefox browser, but it was more famous. It was the lead dev that was working, or the lead tester that was working. And I've been reading about this, and I've been thinking about it. Maybe we are not putting the spotlight enough on the people in the company, and maybe that's why they don't want to push them and go further and do the next step and try to be better.
Who wants to do a job? Who wants to build things and test things when you feel like all of that hard work just gets ignored? I mean, sure, a lot of us like what we do. I like what I do. I do it partly because I like it. I would do something else if I didn't. But at the same time, when everyone else gets the recognition, when sales gets the recognition, when marketing gets the recognition, when the executives get the recognition, and you're like, well, I get it. Marketing works hard. Sales guys work hard. Salespeople work hard. The executives work hard. But ultimately, they can't do anything. They have nothing to sell. They have nothing to market. They have nothing to talk about if I haven't done my job. And it's disheartening. And it's this weird disconnect where they see, and so let me take a step back. My father ran manufacturing companies my whole life. We have this constant argument that he believes that you can build perfect software because he thinks you can build a perfect widget. You can't build a perfect widget. Eventually the widget's going to break, therefore it's imperfect. But a lot of executives see things the way he does. They see developers and testers, and sometimes even product, as machinery on the line. And so we lose our humanity to them. As soon as we've lost our humanity, we become numbers and we become cogs instead of people. As soon as you start calling people resources.
Exactly, I hate that.
Yeah, and then we're not real anymore. So the problem is that executives and all of those folks have to make that shift to recognize you get nothing without the humans. And you get nothing without treating your humans with humanity.
But isn't this digitalizing that we are living, all these changes in digitalizing our life, right? We started by digitalizing the products, then we digitalize the workplace, now we digitalize our life, right? We hear people talking about metaverses, right? And our digital avatars and so on, and AI. Will this be another challenge in our endeavor to not lose our humanity, or?
I'm very concerned about a lot of applications of AI. I think that there are some ways that AI is incredibly helpful. Synthetic data, use AI. Self-healing in your tests, use AI. I am very, very concerned, legitimately frightened about the way we use AI when it comes to policing, the way we use AI when it comes to the military, the way we use AI when it comes to hiring. I am of the mindset that AI should never be used to evaluate, replace, be human. There's too much bias, there's too much risk. People need to be able to earn an income, and until we have universal basic income, like, you can't automate every job. Also, I just don't think you can automate every job in general.
Yeah.
So I have some real concerns. I am not the type who has completely digitized their life. Like, everybody I know has a Nest Cam and the Nest thermostat and all that. My house is analog. Like, I don't have a doorbell because I don't want you to come to my door. Let me know you're coming and I'll knock on the door. Don't surprise me by ringing a doorbell. But like, I don't have any of that because, one, I want to interact with people in a human way. Two, I don't feel terribly comfortable with somebody having access into my home that way. And three, it just feels unnecessary. Like, do we need to have a camera on everything in our lives? Do I need to surveil my neighborhood? I don't think I do. I don't think anybody else does either. So a lot of those applications really concern me for a lot of reasons, primarily related to the bias.
Somehow I feel there is this urgency of doing a lot of things, and there's not enough time to do a lot of things during the 24 hours of a day, and sometimes we take decisions just by being influenced by some, I don't know, there's a trend, okay, or is somebody else telling me you should do that. I'm not gonna spend time in inspecting and see if I really need it or not. I'm just gonna do it because I don't have that time to do some more research on my own. And this is what's happening in the professional area, unfortunately. Okay, so there's a new framework being released, right, for doing automation testing. We have to use that. Does it make sense for our organization?
Right.
How much time will we spend with our team? What will
Right.
be the gains? No, we're doing because the others are doing. We need 85% test coverage. Why? Because this is what we read on.
So this is actually something I said in my tutorial. Test coverage is not test coverage. Coverage as a measure is garbage.
Yeah.
I can have 100% coverage of my code and have that coverage mean nothing. What matters is what's meaningful.
Yeah.
What matters is covering what gives us what provides value, what has the highest risk, what puts us at risk. 100% coverage, 85% coverage, all of these measures just lead to creating tests that auto-pass so that we can say we have them, or creating things that are hard-coded so we can say we have them. Because as soon as you put that measure in there, all of a sudden, that's what you're going to get, because people deliver what you tell them you're measuring. That's why metrics are kind of nonsense in general, because we can manipulate any metric we want to. We can manipulate a metric to hurt a team. We can manipulate a metric to help a team. Metrics provide value when they tell us something meaningful and when they evaluate a team as a whole, not when they look at a percentage of coverage, not when they look at the number of defects entered, not when they look at, trying to think of other things, but there's so many metrics that are just absolutely useless. I do think some of the DORA metrics are useful. They provide value, but they only provide value if you use them the right way.
Yeah.
So.
We kind of tend to get really excited about a nice how to say it, it's like somebody is selling us the perfect solution, as it was a couple years ago with frameworks that were saying, okay, I'm going to handle the boilerplate stuff for you, and you can focus on the business specifics of
Yeah.
your application. And managers were thinking, okay, I'm going to release faster because my developers and testers won't spend too much time on doing the boilerplate. And the testers and developers said, okay, yeah, we're going to do better quality. Now we are shifting to AI. AI gonna help us again to improve our productivity and so on. And managers are thinking that, okay, I'm not gonna need a new tester or developer in the team because the ones that I have will use the AI and will generate some stuff and so on. But in the end is what you mentioned, that there is this constant that always had the best results by being humans and really work with each other and understand each other and understand the ones that we build the solutions for. And this is the only tool that nobody will take from us.
Yeah. AI doesn't understand context. AI can't rationalize or reason. The teams that are going to be the most successful are the teams that are going to understand how to leverage AI in a meaningful way and work with it to deliver something for them. It is not going to be the teams that say, I'm replacing my developers and testers with ChatGPT. Like that's not going to work, and that's going to fail, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to put a lot of people out of work who are they'll eventually get back to it. But this thought that like, well, we have Copilot, so we're fine. Or, we're using ChatGPT, so we're fine. You're not. You need a human to evaluate it. It's never going to understand the context of your software. It doesn't understand the context of what matters and what doesn't. It doesn't even understand the context of semantics of words. So how could it possibly do something as complex as reasoning whether something is a bug or not?
Yeah, indeed. How was it for you, like having these three roles in your career, starting from the technical ones, the business technical, and now director of product? Did it make you see different the world of testing? And is there anything else that you would do differently now, knowing that what you know and you didn't know it before having the new responsibility?
I would love to say that there's something I would change, but sometimes things happen exactly as they're supposed to. I was actually talking to somebody about this recently. I wound up working for my first tech job in the help desk. I only got that job because I was working a horrible customer service job, and somebody there was a temp at this other company and said, like, hey, let me give them your resume. Well, if I hadn't met her, I never would have gotten there. If I hadn't worked at that company, I never would have gone to the next one. If I hadn't worked for a company I really disliked working for, but that sent me to the UK for the first time, I never would have gotten the job with Fleetmatics that got me into a much more technical side of testing. So I wouldn't change anything, with one exception. I finally finished my bachelor's degree May of 2022. And I started my master's this past fall, so fall 2023. I do wish I had done that earlier. And maybe if I had done that earlier, I could have taken a more technical route. But being totally honest, at mid-30s, my brain had lost the ability to learn enough to really learn to code. But I think if I had done it younger, maybe I could have done that. However, if I had done it younger, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be doing something else. I think I learned from each of these roles, and every role led me to the next thing. So like I learned something there and I was directly able to apply it to the next role. The most interesting things, though, have been moving from being a doer as a tester to being kind of I'll say the pigs and chickens, to move to the other side from the product perspective, especially because I started as a product owner, became director of product. So I went from kind of like decomposing somebody else's idea to having to be the idea person. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't done the previous things. I'm getting off track, but I don't know if I could change anything because I wouldn't be in this moment right now if literally anything went differently.
Totally, totally. And it's not like a plan that somebody else did it for you. It's just that you follow naturally
Yeah.
the change, you embrace the change that happened, and you try to understand what works for you. And this is what we were discussing about reskilling,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the fact that it happens a lot in the last years. I've been seeing it a lot. We kind of grew up having parents or grandparents telling us that it's a normal path, right? You go to school and then you take a job,
Yeah.
and then you make yourself a family. And we don't need this common path for all the
Yeah.
humanity, right? We
Yeah.
don't need, as Pink Floyd is saying, to all
Yeah.
be another brick in the wall,
Yeah.
right? And it's perfectly normal to have different paths in your life, personal and professional life.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to be prepared to understand yourself, to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and just don't be afraid to try something else.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the other piece of it for me is I'm ADHD. So part of it is I'm following the dopamine. Like what gives me that dopamine? What feeds me at the moment? This is what's feeding me at the moment. So that's what I'm going to dive into. That gets hard professionally because sometimes things stop giving you dopamine, but you have to keep doing them because they're your job. But still, like I got deeper into testing because it made me happy and excited. So everything that made me happy and excited, I just kept doing. And things that didn't make me happy and excited, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. If I'm not getting anything out of it, I'm gonna go try something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things we can do, a lot of things we can try. And there is another delicate topic, at least in Romania, there are a lot of guys that are following career in IT because they are reading the newspaper and there says you need to go there because there's where the money is. And this is the career that will give you like financial stability and so on. But I really feel that it's the other way around. That if you do the things you love and you try to know yourself and to try to improve yourself, the money will come afterwards, or the I don't know, the excitement or the happiness or the fulfillment or the feeling that you are doing something meaningful. I mean, try it and then see the results and then take a decision if you continue to do it better or you have to shift and try something else and evaluate the results and so on. We are not that agile with our lives than we should be.
You know, I'm kind of two minds on that because unpopular belief, I don't believe you have to have passion for what you do.
Okay.
It's nice. It makes me feel fulfilled. I couldn't do something I didn't have passion for. But I think it's totally acceptable to say, you know what? I make a really good salary as a software developer. And is it what I wake up in the morning to do? Does it get me out of bed? No. But I go in, I put in my 8 hours, I come home, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks or however often it is.
Okay.
And it enables my life. And I think that's totally acceptable. But we ask developers and testers too, like, what's your latest? Give me your GitHub. I want to see your personal projects. Well, you don't ask a doctor what the last off the clock surgery was. Like you don't ask a teacher what the last unpaid lesson was that they did. Why do we ask tech people to do this? It is totally okay to say this is a job, I'm going to do it until I retire, and it funds and enables my life. Some of us, me, I have to enjoy what I do. It has to make me excited. But I think it's totally okay if it doesn't. Because honestly, like, we got to pay the bills.
Yeah, indeed,
you got to
indeed.
eat.
I don't argue with that. And actually, what I was thinking of is that guys are trying to picking up career in this field just because there is this hope of having a big paycheck in the end. But if they get a bit deeper and understand how they are built and what are the things they are good at, they might understand that maybe that career is not for you. I mean, I really think that IT is not for everyone.
It's not. It's not. But I do think if you can do it, even if it's not your passion,
Yeah, totally.
that it's perfectly acceptable to say, I'm not passionate about it, but it pays the bills and I'm good at it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And this is what we try find in our teams all the time. We try to find what is the profile that you fit in. Some are firefighters.
Yeah.
Some are 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? Some are the mentors. You don't have to be that passionate guy that
Yes. Exactly.
share the knowledge with others and stay long nights to build workshops and courses and teach others and
Exactly.
do overtime and so on.
Exactly. As long as you put in what you need to put in for your job, you're fulfilling the requirements, that's enough. Not everybody has to speak at a conference. Not everybody has to write a blog. Like, I don't write a blog. I just am not good at writing blogs. But like, as long as you're decently good at it, so you're not a burden to your team, it's fine, you know? And if a team is all super passionate people, everybody's super passionate, everybody's on fire for the job. One, there's nobody that's willing to do the stuff that's really boring.
Indeed.
Because everybody wants to do the things that are really exciting. Half of your team is gone all the time because they're speaking, they're going to conferences, they're doing a podcast with someone. So like, you get less productivity, and you get less productivity because you spend so much time having those conversations about how to implement things, because everybody's super passionate, everybody's on fire, and everybody has a different idea. So we need the passionate people, and we need the doers.
Exactly, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, really powerful words. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask you and you want to share with us, or a closing message?
My closing message is just think about your users. As you go through your tests, as you build tests, as you think about test coverage and what you're going to test and how you're going to approach it, keep your user in mind. Make them your goal.
Great. So think of your users. Thank you, Jenna, and thanks everyone for watching us. This is the first season of Shift Happens. We are live at Romanian Testing Conference. I was Alex Mocioi, your host. See you in the next episode, and check us soon on YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Spotify. See you in the next episode.